How can we bring about this golden civilization? George thinks it starts with great integrity. Loved that concept, which obviously folds into the golden civilization, to think about the institutions and the governments and everything that don't necessarily think about fiduciary duty in the same way that we do. Um, and and I really thought that this message would resonate with our community here in Sonoma County and our client community. And I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about your idea of this fiduciary in all things. And what can we do as citizens, as activists, to try and get this message out?
Mm-hmm. Great. Wonderful, Ross. And would it be all right if I set the frame for this and go
Please.
back just a bit to the thoughts about a golden civilization?
Yeah.
So, when you hear the notion of a golden civilization, at first you think, pie in the sky, never happened. Look at what's happening in politics. That's utopian. And so you dismiss it, and you dismiss it and we live in a world where we're filled with cynicism.
Yeah.
About the possibility of good things happening. It's actually, I think of it as a disease, the cynicism, although we just take it as a way of life and we create a lot of humor around it and we live with it. Let me share the frame of the golden civilization in a way that I think your community that you're talking about in Sonoma County would understand, and particularly because throughout California, you've had some of the great, enormous technological developments, the freedoms coming from technology that have just been astonishing for all of us in the last 50 years or so. So let me back up just a minute to the golden civilization. So we've had 250 years since the Industrial Revolution of explosive growth, just incredible. Look at us speaking, a couple
Right?
thousand miles a year away, and here we are talking to each other, different time zones, all that kind of stuff. It's amazing, and all the things we can do. It just phenomenal. Health, longevity hasn't touched everybody in the world, but as I said, 90% of people have a smartphone now. So the question that came to me thinking about that and thinking about how we are sending these probes out into the solar system, into the universe, and thinking about how sophisticated that technology is. And the term that NASA uses for that sophisticated technology is the integrity of that technology. Right? Without integrity, it just don't fly. Right? And so and I thought, what a wonderful term. This is what we really need in the golden civilization, is great integrity. And if we can do that in our science and in our technology, who's to stop us from doing it in our politics and our economics? Let's make it happen. And that's just like, okay, so then so you go, all right, yeah, I see that. So how come we can't? What's going on? So when COVID hit, not only was I given the blessing of a little bit of long COVID, and I do view it as a blessing because it gave me this untapped energy beneath the fatigue, the passion. But I also had the time to reflect. I had been on a world tour for the Golden Civilization, gone to places in Asia. I had others go to Africa. I'd gone to Europe and Asia. We had people in Australia, people all over America, asking people, what does a golden civilization look like to you? And it was stunning that it looked like the same thing to all these different people all over the world. So when COVID hit, I had to stop traveling, right? Like everybody else. I couldn't go around and do it in masks and travel all over the world. Nobody'd come, and I didn't really want to go. So I had this time to reflect. Is there a simpler path that I haven't completely identified? And I thought about this explosive growth and coming from these great corporations primarily. And I thought, how come that they can do all of that? Doesn't it make sense that after 250 years of enormous growth, that at the top of every hierarchy of power, that we would find the very best of humanity, right? Our wisdom and our compassion. Why wouldn't we? And for 250 years of growth, why isn't it there at the top of every hierarchy of power?
But it's
It's
not.
hard to find it at the top of any hierarchy,
Yeah.
right? And why isn't it there? And I thought, going back to economic thinking, I thought it's got to be something that's happening at the very base of our system, of something that's happening as corporations are being formed,
Hmm.
that they're being given a kind of directive, a permission to go in a particular direction and not another. Why is it that corporations don't act with the humanity that you might act or that I might act in relation to the planet or to people or to democracy? And I realized that we don't require anything of the sort from them,
Hmm.
that we give them all this
Yeah.
power. They've got this power. I know you're very interested in capital markets. We give them all this power of capital markets. We give them all this power to get enormous debt so they can suddenly be flooded with money. We give them power to have a freedom of speech that you or I can't imagine,
Yeah.
which I'm not sure is the healthiest thing. But we give them great power over media and with political contributions and all these things. What do we require of them? Some taxes, maybe.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe we should require them to be humane. So that was the idea. And I thought, what if we just did a single sentence at the basis? When you get incorporated, you have to sign on. There's a law that basically it's a single sentence and you have to say, yes, I swear to do this. And this is what it is. I'm just going to read it so I don't miss a word of it because I think it's really important. So this is my single sentence, my one sentence legislative proposal. A fiduciary standard of obligation is required for all institutions, corporate, nonprofit, and governmental, to place the interests of all stakeholders, of truth, of humanity, democracy, and the living planet that sustains us, first, above their own self-interest. You and I know this because we swear on to a fiduciary standard
Yeah.
as a financial planner. And we place our clients' interests ahead of our own. Why shouldn't we require that of every corporate institution, including nonprofits? Because nonprofits can come off and just tell one version of the truth.
Right.
And as I said, one of the things I've learned is that we need to hold truth to a higher standard in all of our media, that the truth should mean the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And it doesn't mean that there aren't variations of interpretation, but the truth would be like a bell curve, where the top of the bell curve would be scientific or investigative reporting, or what used to be a standard, which is two people, different people corroborating a story. We don't have that right now. And if we had that layer of truth, and then certainly you have other opinions and other ideas, but they're of a lesser order. So the thought was, let's promote this. And you can go on my website and
Yeah.
see, I've got it there. I encourage people to use it on their Facebook headers. I've got some of the registered life planners in our community are using it on their signature page. We've got, when I say use it, I've got three logos in particular that I encourage people to use in their correspondence. Promote them through social media, and I'm available to talk about it. And other
That's
people
great.
are as well. Yeah, to
That's
try and
great.
get the word out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting when I think about my application in my work of the fiduciary standard, I'm very intentional about that,
Yeah.
very intentional. And I find that when I think about incentives, that my incentive is that I really bring the client closer to their dream of freedom. And that for me is the reward. And I
Absolutely.
think that the incentives often with politics and corporations and such is is not that. And it's, I don't know how we can try and realign those incentives to be more in the best interest, in the fiduciary interest of all
Yeah.
stakeholders, as you say.
Yeah. More humane, ultimately,
Yeah,
acting like a good human being.
yeah,
And why would we ever give power to an entity that isn't required to be a good human being?
yeah.
I don't get it. It's time to shift because we're clearly seeing too many global problems come up as a consequence of that level of power without that degree of responsibility.
Yeah, yeah.